We were gifted a can of wheat from 1968. Do you think it's still good? Hey, Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene, and today we have a special treat for you. My friend Debbie brought this to me yesterday, and this is a can of wheat from 1968. It was in one of her neighbors' homes, and they were going to get rid of it. And so I am totally excited. Now, the storage conditions for this can were that for the entire life, this can of hard red wheat from 1968, which makes it
54 years old.
54 years old, almost as old as I am. It was stored in a basement, right? And then the last 2 months it was stored in the garage, but right now it's really cool, so that should not have impacted it.
So overall, it was pretty ideal then.
Yeah, and
pretty ideal.
The storage container is perfect, right? It's a can. It was sealed. It was commercially packaged, so theoretically, it absolutely should have been packaged right. So I'm excited to see what this looks like.
Okay.
All right, Johnny.
Should we break into it?
Break into it.
Let's do it. Okay, I don't see any critters right off.
And it just kind of smells like old dusty wheat.
Yeah, maybe like it's 54 years old or something. But it looks good.
Yeah.
Overall, it looks pretty normal. Still don't see any evidence of weevil or anything else in here, so they probably packaged it up right and it was stored well, so it looks pretty normal.
That's really exciting. That's really exciting. Now, one of the things that we would anticipate is that over time, we would lose some of the nutrition in the wheat. You lose some of the vitamins, right? The minerals tend to remain constant. So what we're gonna do is make up a loaf of bread, and we're gonna try and sprout this. Now, because we wanna compare it to something, what are we going to compare it to?
Well, we've got a bucket of wheat out of ours. Now, we normally use white wheat.
That's my favorite.
This was a bucket of red wheat from 2002. So it's 20 years old, but still easily within its lifetime storage. So we're going to compare it with this because that's kind of one of the best comparisons we can make. Red wheat to red wheat. Obviously, this one very old and this one getting there, but still okay.
And the storage conditions were a little bit different. While they were both in a cool basement, this is in a can, and the cans are non-permeable, and so it's actually a better storage container than the buckets, because the buckets will allow for a slow transmission of oxygen through the walls over time, and oxygen degrades the storage. So this is kind of cool. Let's get going and see what it's like.
Yeah.
Okay, on this side we have the 54-year-old wheat, and this one's the 20-year-old wheat. And when we opened this one, there wasn't any smell.
Yeah, I didn't smell anything.
So you didn't get the kind of, maybe musty?
Something.
I mean, it's
something
not,
that was just kind of, okay, a little weird.
It's not really offensive or anything, but this one had practically no odor at all. The other thing that I'm noticing is when I look closely at these, the older one it looks a little bit dehydrated, or a little bit, like this one looks like it's retained a little bit more moisture. This one, I mean, it looks like it gets older. I guess it's more wrinkled. It's kind of like us. A little bit more old and wrinkled, not as young and vibrant. So it'll be really interesting. Now, this, I'm gonna sprout some, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a half a cup of this, pour it in here. I'm gonna fill this up and let it soak for 24 hours. Well, no, I'm sorry. And let it soak overnight. And then I'll dump it off, and then I'll rinse it 2 or 3 times a day for a few days. This jar is actually from True Leaf. It's one of my new sprouting jars. So it's fancy schmancy and really cool with this plastic lid that won't rust. This is just a little piece of cloth, right? Or a little piece of kind of a twill. It was actually taken off one of my daughter's prom dresses when we had to shorten it. And so this is just like making dough. That's not the best of the best, right? And this lid will rust, but so I'm gonna take these and I'm gonna rinse them, and then I'm going to let them soak overnight, and then we'll start the sprouting process. And it'll be interesting to see if either of these sprout, because they're both old, right? All right, now let's get baking. To try and make this comparison as fair as possible, I'm going to use exactly the same recipe with exactly the same amount. So the recipe I'm using is from Pantry Secrets, which is a really great food storage recipe. So this is 10.5 cups of whole wheat flour. And then I wanted to show you, so this is how I store my yeast. I put it in this bottle. I buy these packages of Saf instant yeast. This is from April of 2008. And I store it in the bottom of my freezer. It's in a Mylar bag, and as soon as oxygen gets in here, this bag, which was hard, turns soft. And then I just pour it into this jar. I'm making a mess though. And I store this in my refrigerator, but what's really cool about it is that I just always have it ready. So I'm gonna put 3 tablespoons of yeast, 1 tablespoon of salt. I'm a fan of pink Himalayan salt, so that's what I always use. 1/2 cup of sugar. And then I'm gonna give this a quick little mix. And then I'm gonna put 4 quarter-sized tablespoons of sunflower lecithin. And this is great for making the bread soft. It has a really long shelf life. You could use soy lecithin, but I prefer sunflower. Actually, the recipe calls for 3 of them, not 4. I lied. And you don't measure it because this stuff is really sticky and doesn't measure well. After I add the lecithin, I'm just gonna mix this. And then I'm gonna put in 4 cups of hot water. I've got my 4 cups of hot water, and I'm just going to dump it in. It's gonna look a little bit more like cookie dough than bread dough at first. And then I'm gonna let this knead for 10 minutes, and I'll be back. It's kneaded for 10 minutes, and the dough seems abnormally heavy to me. And granted, it's 100% whole wheat, and whole wheat's always gonna be super heavy. And like I said, I didn't put the applesauce in it this time, but it just feels a little bit heavier than normal. The texture is okay still, right? I'm just gonna divide it into 4. And we'll see how well it works. I never quite get this equal. This is still just a little bit bigger. Okay. Yeah, I'm hoping the yeast does some wonderful things to this because it is pretty heavy. All right, and we'll just cover it and we'll let it rise till it's doubled and see how that works. This is the 20-year-old yeast, and it seems like it works fairly similar. The mixer I'm using is called a Bosch universal mixer. Seriously, it's my favorite ever. Makes the best bread, and it's super easy to use. All right. So here we go. feels very similar. Not quite as heavy. And of course, that could be user error, right? That could totally have been my fault. I might not have put in enough water. It seemed like it took more water than normal. And I think it's just because the wheat probably dried out in storage a little bit more, right? That tends to do that. But, okay, so the dough is pretty comparable. This actually feels a little bit nicer. It feels a little bit more elastic. Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, it feels more elastic. But I only have 2 more bread pans. It's almost ready to put into the oven. But so I'm gonna just make 2 little long loaves in a glass pan. So it won't look quite the same, but it'll be okay. Thank you so much for being willing to do this. Now what we have is we have 2 different varieties, well, 2 different loaves of bread. One is made from red hard wheat that was from 1968. So it is 54 years old.
That's
Older than many of you,
delicious.
except for Emily. She's probably one of the ones who would have been storing this, right? And then the second one is hard red wheat from our food storage that was 20 years old, because I really don't like hard red wheat. I like white wheat, so it could get old. Now, so I'm not going to tell you which is which, but I would like you guys to talk amongst yourselves and evaluate the look of the bread, the texture of the bread, the taste of the bread, and then give us an overall impression, okay?
Like out of 5 stars or something?
The world is watching you, however you want to do this. So you each have water so that you can cleanse your palate. If it's horrible, don't feel like you have to continue to eat it. There are napkins. You could spit it into
Or a
napkin,
trash can
or a
right
trash
here.
can. Whichever way is more ladylike, John.
Would you repeat the years, please?
So 1968, which would make it 54 years old. The sweet's really old. And the other one is 2002, so it's 20 years old.
And they're both red?
They're both red. Okay? All right, go for it. Be our judges.
Sweet, how do we do this?
We'll take the towel off first.
That would be helpful.
Okay, let's just look at them. Looks like
That's
these
puffier.
raised a little higher than these did, but this is a nice shaped loaf.
It all looks good
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, they look good, but yeah.
All right, John.
Okay, we ready to
Yeah.
cut?
How's it feel?
Like bread.
Well, I mean,
It's-
weight-wise,
They both, this one may feel a little dense, but they both,
now I want to feel it.
I know.
yeah, go ahead and,
Oh, it's nice and warm. This is going to be good. Even if it's 50 years old.
No, we're all touchy. I did wash my hands.
This one feels denser,
Oh, that's a
actually.
lot lighter.
Yeah, that feels dense.
yeah.
Kenny?
All right.
I will lift them too.
Oh, we thought you were going to cut.
No, I'm not that cool. That dude is though.
All right.
Is this a left-handed knife? Oh, it is a left-handed knife, so I will go ahead and cut some here.
I didn't.
If someone likes the heel, there's one.
I'll do a half.
Whoa.
It's still warm, so it's...
Okay. So you want half?
Yeah, just half of, for me, works.
Okay.
You know you have to eat the other half on that one.
Somebody want to take the other half?
Yeah.
Should do that again.
Thank you. Go ahead, Emily. Feels nice.
It smells like old wheat,
Yeah.
but yeah, the texture, I think the texture is really nice.
Nope. Tastes good.
Tastes
though.
good.
Now, one of the things about this recipe is it just has the basics. So there's no oil in it or applesauce in it or anything to make it any better, because we really wanted it, the whole wheat experience, so you could taste that better. So it does have sugar and salt in it.
No, it looks like it held together really nicely. And the texture, I mean, to
No,
me,
it tastes
it's
good.
all good. right?
Okay,
It is good.
there are napkins or
I was
plates.
going to say, would you like a plate, Emily? You're very welcome. Any more needed down there? All right. I will finish that, though.
So it's good enough to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
we should actually introduce our crowd. So over here on the left-hand side, that is Emily, John's mom. The next one is Jobina, my dear, dear friend. And then you all know Kenny and Jonathan. And then
I always show up for food, right?
and Jennifer is actually my evil twin. There you go.
Okay, anybody want to handle this further?
And you're welcome to talk about anything different that you see in that while you're cutting it or...
Okay.
Go ahead.
How does it smell?
That smells weird.
Thank you.
Tell me what weird smells like.
Like old wheat.
Oh, this one's much older
This is
smell.
older wheat, much older wheat.
Very strong.
But the texture, again, isn't that bad. Like, it holds together really nicely. See how it tastes.
It's okay to be brutally honest. That's what we need.
It has
here.
a little
old
bit
wheat.
older wheat, but it's not bad. It's not like a
edible.
rancid. So you're good.
I can't.
With enough butter
And the butter's right there.
And even if you couldn't have
and a tall
butter,
glass of milk.
you'd be just fine. I'll tell you tomorrow if I get sick, though.
So it has a little different flavor to me.
Yeah.
Kind of not fresh.
It's just old, yeah.
Not really anxious.
And the smell.
It's just weird.
And the smell is a little bit,
So picky. Yeah,
Sorry.
I guess I just don't eat enough bread. Oh, I'm a sad case. I'd still eat it.
I mean, I might finish it. We'll see. That one's better though.
For sure.
And I can't tell because they both taste weird to me. So I don't know if that's because it's old wheat or because I'm used to using the other kind of wheat with the bread.
The white wheat.
Oh, the
'Cause you
white.
don't use red wheat a lot. So
And that's a really good point. And the reason I don't use red wheat very often is because to me it tastes more acidic and it doesn't sit on my stomach as well as the white wheat. And that could just be me. It's a flavor preference. Some people really love the bold taste of the red wheat, but I'm not such a fan. Any other comments? Anything that you think?
They held up fine. I could eat either or. You're not gonna die, people.
I would definitely eat that if I was hungry. It's not my favorite. It's got a little bit of a weird smell and taste, but I don't think it's harmful. This one's definitely much better.
Yeah, I agree.
So currently there is a wheat shortage in the United States from some different issues. But when I went to the store yesterday, you could not purchase any flour. So we've kind of established that you would eat it if you had to. But would it be a better idea to get rid of the old and bring in some new? But then you have a supply issue right now.
I would make sure I got some new before I threw out the old. But yeah, certainly that's the goal is you get it, you use it and rotate through it so it doesn't get 54 years old. It's much better to be using and rotating and restocking with fresh.
I
So-
have no problem with it. I can use it.
You can use it.
I can use it.
She's
we'll all
tough.
donate it
She's
to
so
Jovina.
I'm like, my chickens would enjoy it.
And that's the next question.
Yeah.
Should we serve this for dinner or should we feed it to the chickens? How do you feel about that?
If we don't have people over for dinner, we can serve it. But if we do, give it to the chickens.
We could serve this one for dinner and it would be fine. That one goes to the chickens in my book.
Wow, that's saying something. All right, you guys, thank you so much. Now you
Thanks
can
for
have some
cooking
with butter
for
on it.
Thanks.
We tested the germination on both of these batches of wheat. Let's look at the 20-year-old first. So this is 7 days, and you can see there are just a couple of sprouts. At 4 days, we tried to do this, and there just wasn't anything, but the majority of this wheat didn't sprout at all. So very low germination rate with the 20-year-old. Now the 50-year-old was kind of interesting because at first it looked like it was sprouting, but none of what it was viable. So I think you can see like one of them right here. Let's see if I can, where it kind of looks like it was going to sprout, but then it just kind of washed away. So I don't know what to think of that other than, yeah, this is not successful germination in the 54-year-old. Like I said, the 20-year-old, very, very low germination. I wouldn't count on sprouting either of these. This was a fun experiment. Thank you so much, Debbie, for giving us this opportunity. So it sounds like really this was not a fan. Like Jobina said that she would eat it, and I think that was pretty much the consensus, right?
Yeah.
If we're starving,
Yeah,
would
I would eat it if there was nothing else to eat. But I guess the take-home message here is let's not let it get that old. If you have wheat that's that old, don't throw it out because it might be hard to replace right now. But at some point, if you can replace that, this would be better for chicken feed than people feed.
absolutely. And yet this that's 20 years old seriously made a decent loaf of bread, right? It would have been better if it would have been white wheat, because I'm not a fan of red wheat, and I can definitely taste the red wheat flavor in this. But it would work, right? And homemade bread, it's one of those wonderful comfort foods and nutritious and just a whole lot of good stuff about storing your own wheat. Just 54 years old, while the bread is edible, doesn't look too bad, right? It's a little bit dense, but it would be much better if the bread were only, or the wheat were only 20 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question of the day is, how old is your food storage? Do you have something that should be replaced? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.